And welcome to another edition of Patriots No Huddle. Your hosts, as always, Derek Haven, Steve Balch, Jerry, Mike Diabate. We're here, brought to you by PatsFans.com. Please do subscribe to our Pats Fans YouTube channel. Like, share, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Keep us high on those podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. Today's episode, just the boys getting together to do a little roundtable discussion over OTAs, little roster discussion. I put up a 53-man projection that we could go ahead and break down, and you all can make fun of me for. Let's do it. But before we do anything, Steve, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. The sun is shining here today, so knock on wood. And it's great to be able to talk about minicamp, and with Mike being down there, it's great that he's going to give some firsthand observations. So let's get to it.
Yeah, Mike. So first off, how are you doing today, my friend? And how was? I guess we'll get into just roll into your camp thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing remarkable, gentlemen. Thank you for again allowing me to join this triumvirate here, and I really do believe that the best is yet to come for Patriots No Huddle this season. Listen, minicamp is always that time of year where emotions are high, expectations are high, fans are excited. They really can't wait to watch what this team is going to be able to do on the field. And naturally, I mean, players are going to pop. Drake May had a very good first day. Looked very comfortable in this new Josh McDaniels type of offense. And you're really not able to see all the nuances that you're going to see in training camp or that you're going to see in the preseason and hopefully into the regular season. But you get little seedlings of player comfort playing under certain coaches, and you just get that feeling with Drake right off the bat. So he's impressed me right from the get-go. A player we've been talking about offline. As a matter of fact, we wanted to save a little bit for the library, so to speak, and really come in here and I think wax poetically on one Kyle Williams, who is looking very good, very comfortable, and very exciting in this offense in terms of being that type of offensive weapon that the Patriots haven't had in quite a while. Very happy to see Demario Douglas fitting in well, too. Douglas has not been one for the eye-popping plays the last couple of days, but he's been consistent with everything that he's done. So for those of you looking for a little bit of offense, there you go. I think Travion Henderson has looked very good and very comfortable as a rookie in this offense so far. Mini camp and camps of this nature always tend to favor they're going to favor the skill position players because the trenches really can't be evaluated until the pads come on. And Mike Vrabel said that earlier this week. But what we're seeing from the glamour positions, even on defense, when you talk about the pass rush and guys like Keon White and Kavion Chiazon getting after the quarterback, and defensive backs like Christian Gonzalez showing off what he can do and picking off Drake May in day two. These are the seedlings that you're going to bring with you into training camp. So while there's nothing that has been absolutely show-stopping over the course of the last couple of days, a lot to be excited for heading into camp this year, Dan.
Yeah, it's always hard with practice, even when you get into training camp with pads, really, because you could be right there, boots on the ground, right next to the field, and it's really the coaches that are going to be able to see some of the the real battles on the lines, or like linebackers, running backs, offensive linemen, defensive linemen. That's really hard to do. The one-on-ones with the cornerbacks, the receivers, the quarterback decisions, the procedural plays. Are there any penalties? Like that stuff's easy to diagnose, but you really can't do it unless you're right there and you know exactly what the assignments are. And that's impossible for any media member or fan to know if you're in attendance. So it's tough. And Steve, any thoughts on what you've heard or seen or whatever from Patriots OTAs?
Well, they had the video clip from minicamp yesterday, and Mike was just mentioning Travion Henderson. His speed, they had him returning a kick, and he looked like, I saw the video that the Patriots had posted. He looked like he was shot out of a cannon. And that was really, I mean, it's exciting because they've kind of lacked that speed, in different parts of the offense, and seeing that. And, we heard good things about him, coming out of the backfield as a receiver. and he got major props from a lot of people when he said, James White was the perfect guy to run the Josh McDaniels offense, which James White loved that. I saw, he retweeted that clip. So, but no, that to me is exciting. I mean, because it's bringing that element. And he mentioned Kyle Williams, so we'll get to more. But Travion Henderson, I'm really excited to see what he can do in this offense.
Yeah, no, I would say, as we were having a discussion offline, I was about to say to what we were talking about, Mike, with Kyle Williams, suddenness is the way I would describe him. And I would say the same thing with Kyle Williams, or sorry, with Travion Henderson. Explosiveness, suddenness. They bring just like a little bolt, a little spark plug to the offense that I feel like you can see how they're going to fit, in and be value add to this offense, and with Drake May and Josh McDaniels and everything. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm not going to lie. When I saw Steve, the video of Henderson kind of accelerating, as they say in certain pill commercials, if it lasts for longer than 4 hours, you should see a doctor's help. I was about 3 hours and 59 minutes in. I guess I was pumped because I could see it. I could see the magic, and we've been talking about Henderson in this offense, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. And then there's a video going around of Kyle Williams' one-handed catch in practice, and I was like, these guys are going to be impact players for this team in year one. You could, if you're seeing it build right now, in June, you're going to see it. You're going to see it in July. You're going to see it, in August and September, and it's going to roll right into the season. I'm so excited for what they're going to bring to the table. Mike, what else you got?
Yeah, I mean, coming back to Williams for just a second, because he has been so impressive, and really, I think one of the guys that's leapt off the page. You mentioned earlier about adjectives to describe him. I keep writing the word down, electric, and I keep untyping it and then typing it over again, for lack of not, use the thesaurus an awful lot to find synonyms for that word, but it describes him so well, and that's exactly what he's been. And I wrote about this about 2 months ago for SI when he first came on, after he was first drafted. This is a kid that wants to be elite every time he steps on the field, and that type of attitude is something that I'm seeing in a lot of players with the New England Patriots this year. Not just someone like a Kyle Williams, who obviously, has the ability to run routes, and he's a very good route runner. That ability to start and stop at the beginning of his stride, that's going to make defensive backs miss a lot more than they hit on him. So there is his niche to be able to carve out a significant role in the offense this year. But you're seeing it from guys like Henderson. You're actually seeing it from some of the veterans as well. Kendrick Bourne, I think, is playing with a renewed sense of purpose this year. He had a couple of big grabs the other day. Guys are coming together in ways that you didn't see a whole lot last year. And maybe that needs to be credited to Mike Vrabel. I would say that this head coaching staff, and this coaching staff, I should say, is really instilling, I think, a discipline in this team that is showing a little bit more than we've seen in years past. But at the same time, they also have the right blend of culture guys in here that I think is going to help to build this franchise back to what we know and love about the Patriots, being a no-nonsense, gritty style team that never gives up, that does its job. And maybe that mantra will not be coming back on the walls in Gillette Stadium anytime soon, but you can feel it. It's back in the building, and it's a good thing because it's what this franchise has always stood for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. So there's a couple of things I want to touch on, and then we're going to go into my 53-man breakdown, and we'll talk about that and get into the rest of that stuff. I want to touch on this thing that Keon White said today. He said, and per Christopher Price from the Globe, who was just on a couple weeks ago, friend of the show, Christopher Price tweeted this out or printed this. Now I feel like I have a coach from Keon White. That was his quote. I like Mike. He leads with work. I can respect that. It's similar to Bill Belichick, in parentheses, Just with the younger face, I think we all know how I feel about that. I liked him. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. You know, I had heard that a lot of people like Gerard Mayo, but I did feel like, as we've discussed on previous shows, that there was a lack of structure as the season progressed. Keon White was pretty. Keon White was pretty strong vocally. About how he felt about the situation. He obviously seems happier now. Mike, when you hear that quote, what are your first thoughts to that?
It's ironic that you asked me about it. I actually just finished writing about this for Sports Illustrated, an article that will probably be dropping later. I wasn't surprised to hear Keon talk that way and be very raw and very forthcoming when it comes to the coaching style that he likes. He was very upfront about that from the night he was drafted. I remember being on a conference call with Keon and saying, I like when a coach gets in my face. I want to be called out. I want to be driven and, kind of called to the table every single time I'm out there, because it's how I get better. It's how I respond. Keon was very complimentary about Gerard Mayo in a lot of ways last season. I don't want to go ahead and make it seem like, Keon is dropping all this on the feet of Gerard Mayo. I think he respected the fact that he was trying to be his own man, trying to do his own thing. But at the same time, you also need to recognize that your players need coaching and they need structure. And most importantly, they need consistency. And those are things that were not visible on the field last year. And really, from all of the evidence that I've collected over the off season, it wasn't something that was really felt in the locker room either. The team felt like it didn't have direction. Keon is simply saying, I think, what a lot of us in the media, a lot of fans, and mostly a lot of people in that locker room were feeling all season long, that a change was drastically needed. And for someone like Keon White, this is great news, because if he's being pushed to the maximum of his ability, that means he's going to get back to that nasty type of defense that he likes to play. And it fits hand in glove with the type of defense that Mike Vrabel and Terrell Williams want to run, that aggressive style. In fact, in Chris's piece, he mentioned that Keon was very forthcoming about packages that are already being drawn up, where both he and Milton Williams are kind of taking turns aligning next to Christian Barmore. And Steve, we've talked about this several times on pods personally. When Christian is absorbing the double team up front, that is going to free up one of these gentlemen. And if you're an opposing quarterback and you're looking at Keon White or Milton Williams coming at you, that's a scary thing, and it's a scary good thing for the New England Patriots. So, yeah, this all makes sense, and it does. I laughed and chuckled about, Bill Belichick with a younger face. I think Bill and Mike are both going to use that to their advantage when they're both, jousting with each other at the podium. But at the same time, I really think it's an apt comparison. So, yeah, I'm not surprised by this at all, and I think it's a good sign that Keon is the one that's being vocal about it.
Yeah, so I think you go back to the Steve Spagnuolo style NASCAR package, and I just look at Harold Landry, Christian Barmore, Milton Williams, or Keon White, and I'm just thinking, man, that could be absolutely tenacious up front, because it's a penetrating style, so it's going to be different. His thoughts to me, I feel like he felt frustrated. And let's be honest. I mean, call a spade, right? There's been so much turnover on the coaching staff and some disorganization for the last several years. So it's not just all on Gerard Mayo. I think guys liked Mayo. I just think that I think they liked the plan. I just don't think it was executed the way they were hoping for, and they felt like they need to readjust to add some more structure and get the train back on the rails, so to speak. Steve, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and it goes back to last year. I mean, Keon White talked about not getting coached up enough, and it might not have been so much to do with Mayo, but with his positional coaches. Because I got that impression that he wasn't calling out Gerard Mayo, he was calling out his positional.
There was a lot of sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt. There's a lot of chatter about it wasn't as much as Mayo, it was the guys he surrounded himself with on the staff, and it was not every single person, but it's like the offensive linemen were getting what they needed to do. You know, a lot of people raved about AVP, but maybe not the running back coach, maybe not Scott Peters on the offensive line, maybe Covington had a good idea about schemes, but he wasn't sure how to implement a whole defense, you know, and there was a lot of like, you know, I guess adulation, you know, there.
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, they kind of put themselves in that position because Gerard
Sure.
did not have a lot of experience elsewhere in the league, so he didn't have the connections to bring in the people that they probably really needed to surround him with. But that, you know, that's old hat. We've gone through that. I like the fact that he likes the discipline part of this, and Joel sounded off with that first. I mean, there you go. You know, if you want to improve, you have to be able to take discipline and correction, because your coaches see everything. You might not see everything that you need to, and you're never going to be at that point where you can't continue to learn. Because I think once you reach that point, then your play starts to, the level of play starts to drop. So I really like that. I like the fact that he's motivated, and that sounds like everyone on the defense is. And you talked about Christian Barmore. A healthy Christian Barmore is going to make this defense really, really tough, because when you put him next to Milton Williams, I mean, that interior is going to create issues for opposing offenses, because it's going to push the pocket, which allows your edge guys to be able to get better pressure because quarterbacks can't step up. I like the fact that Landry, Chason, White, these guys are all going to be really good edge players. You can't forget Anthony Jennings. He's more of a edge setter, but I think his opportunities to get some more pressure on the quarterbacks is going to increase with the aforementioned players.
And I think Braden Swinson too. I mean, I'm really
Swinson.
I think as a rotational piece in his first year, I think just a couple of snaps here or there, I think he could just add to the mix. I can't say exactly who I heard it from. I can tell you guys offline, but a lot of people have told me that Milton Williams, I know for a fact he was chewed out once or twice during OTAs. And I think it was kind of I think everyone sees, like, all these guys are on social media. They know how much some of these guys signed for. He's a big ticket free agent. And I think Vrabel just is the tone setter. And I think he wants to go ahead and just kind of lay it out there. And he's going to add that structure. And I think that's important. And the same person also told me that Christian Barmore looks like he did 2 years ago. Like, he's back to form and he's motivated. As he said, speaking to the media yesterday, we're recording this on June 11th. This was June 10th. And Barmore's talking about how he has that fire in his heart, to kind of go after and remind people, who may have forgot about him. I'm paraphrasing, but he was fired up talking about his style of play. And if those two guys are going to rip, you have a couple of guys on the edges you could switch out, and with some speed on the linebackers, the secondary that they have in place right now, I think this defense is going to be ultra aggressive. And I'm sure there'll be times that we're talking about this over the next several months that we're going to say, hey man, the defense was a little too aggressive. They got burned on the back end. I'm sure we're going to be talking about times where we said, man, they just came away with a 6-7 sack game because they were relentless and the offensive line had no answers. The quarterback couldn't get rid of the ball because he's getting pressure in his face right up the middle all the time through the A or the B gap. I'm sure we're going to see that. Before we switch over, Mike, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, just a bit. I mean, to your point, Derek, we saw this a couple of years ago when Joshua Uche and Matthew Judon were taking advantage of that double team that Christian was absorbing. And when all three of these guys were healthy, it wreaked havoc on a lot of opposing offenses. So now you add Milton Williams and Keon White into these roles, and Christian once again being called upon to do what he did 2 years ago when he really kind of, I believe, put the rest of the league on notice in terms of what he was really, willing to do and what he was able to do. Yeah, it's going to be a problem for opposing offenses. And I think that him being healthy, we talked to him earlier this week. Christian was very forthcoming in saying that he wants to get back to being me. And he wants to remind everyone that he's still the same guy a couple of years ago that was being heralded as one of the top budding defensive linemen in this league. I think you're going to see that level from Christian Barmore this year. It looks like you're already seeing that. And Steve, just to get back to a point that you made a few moments ago about Keon's comments and not calling out Mayo, I think you're absolutely right on the money, because one of the things that Keon was very forthcoming about when he spoke with us yesterday was praising Mike Smith, the outside linebackers coach, and saying that he feels that he's got a great relationship with him. Mike has a very similar style to Mike Vrabel, and that it kind of filters down from the head coach all the way to the positional coaches. So, yeah, I think to your point, a lot of Patriots players would probably say that it wasn't Mayo per se that really was where they felt their frustration. It was the fact that the message from the top wasn't filtering down to the subsequent coaches on the staff. I don't think you're going to see that this year. It looks like that message is coming very clearly from Vrabel, and it's being relayed by all of his positional coaches out there on the field, offense and defense.
Absolutely. I want to transition a little bit to the David Andrews retirement speech. We haven't been able to talk about that. He announced his retirement, after a very solid career in the NFL as an undrafted free agent out of Georgia, and I think we would all agree that he embodied a great way for any franchise to be proud of a player on and off the field. He did a lot for the community. As I've mentioned before, I'm good friends with Jake Andrews, who is now on the Texans, and he told me that the day he was drafted, David Andrews' wife texted Jake's wife to welcome them to the community and brought them over dinner, one of the nights, like a casserole or something like that. And I just feel like David, his legacy as a Patriot really is part of what we say the Patriot way. I feel like he, carried himself with dignity. I thought he's kind of an underdog story. Maybe he wasn't the best center in the league, but he had to be in the top half for the majority of his career. I mean, he was a captain in his second year, again, as an undrafted player. Really an impressive person. Unfortunately, I've never talked to him personally. I hope I can. Ton of charity work, ton of funding. Just thought that his speech, at his presser, to me was really, it was happy and sad at the same time. I understand that like injuries happen and different regimes and different, different kind of styles for different coaches. And he only wanted to play for one organization, but I just thought he had a hell of a career. And my favorite moment for him will always be the AFC Championship game in Kansas City against the Chiefs before the Patriots played the Rams in 2019, where they scored a touchdown and he's waving to fans off the field, or waving by to fans off the field. To me, that will be my favorite embodiment of him. Steve, your thoughts on David Andrews and his career in New England?
Yeah, he was the quintessential team guy, right? Puts the team first. Isn't particularly flashy at what he does, but it's very effective. And he was universally loved in the locker room. That tells you a lot about the person himself. I mean, his teammates always raved about him. Undrafted guy, right? And you telling the story of Jake Andrews' family and how David and his wife welcomed them to the team. It reminded me, I was really good friends a long time ago with former Bruins coach, Pat Burns, who passed away a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat was an awesome guy, but he talked about one of the best teammates that he ever coached, believe it or not, was Ty Domi. And he said, if you have 15 Ty Domis on your team, you will not lose many hockey games because he's always stuck up for his teammates. And he said that he was great with rookies who get called up. You know, in the NHL, they call up rookies all the time, maybe for a cup of coffee in the, in the league when they have some injuries or illnesses, whatever. And he talked about how Ty would take the young guys under his wing. He would tell them to check out of the hotel. They're gonna live with him, and take care of them and show them the way. And that struck me as the exact same. It's apples and oranges. Yes, different sports, different players, but that attitude, team first, with David Andrews, always struck me as that. And he was always very vocal, down on the field, and you could hear him during games and practices. And when, I remember when he was calling out Ramondre Stevenson after he had a big touchdown. And, it's just that kind of thing you're going to remember about him. And I loved his quotes when he talked about, he fought the good fight and all this. And, just an outstanding person and a great football player. I mean, he's going to be missed, but hopefully he's going to stick around in the area, because I hope they find something for him where he's either in the media or connected with the team somehow.
Yeah, I had heard that. I had heard he was going to continue to stay in Mass, and probably I'm sure he'll spend plenty of time in Georgia. But I think there's an opportunity for him to be potentially on the coaching staff. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Whether I'm not sure it's going to be this year, but maybe next year, I wouldn't totally knock it. Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think you guys have said it best when it comes to David. I mean, just a steady presence. In fact, I called him that a couple of last week when I was writing about David and his retirement speech, the Patriots steady man in the middle. And to me, I think that's what's going to be the most missed aspect of David Andrews. Steve, I think it's great that you mentioned the Ramondre Stevenson touchdown and him being the first to congratulate. I distinctly remember a tough year for everybody in 2020 when fans weren't allowed in the stands and there wasn't anything that anybody could do but essentially watch this team from afar, including members of the media during the pandemic. And the first game, the first touchdown that Cam Newton was responsible for as the lead quarterback, as the starting quarterback, who is the first guy that goes over, lifts him up, and gives him the biggest hug and the biggest welcome to the team? Is David Andrews. And Cam remarked about that after when we spoke to him via Zoom conference, and he said, "For David Andrews to come over and give me the hug, I feel like I've arrived. I feel like I'm one of them now." And that really, I think, spoke volumes to me. You're talking about a guy that arguably at the top of his game, maybe not when he got here to New England, but someone who clearly was at the top of his position for a number of years, one of the most famous quarterbacks of his generation, is giving that kind of prop to David Andrews. It says a lot about who you are. So I'm always going to remember that steady presence, the guy you could always count on, whether it be praise, whether it be a good swift kick in the ass and help you kind of motivate you a little bit. David was always there, but you knew that he was always going to have your back, good, bad, or indifferent. And players like that are so few and far between. When you have those guys, you want to hold on to them for as long as you did. Kudos to the Patriots for being able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys have anything else you want to touch on before we switch over to the breakdown of the roster?
No, let's do it.
All right, cool. All right, so real quick. So again, thank you for everyone who is listening live to the Patriots No Huddle podcast, brought to you by PatsFans.com. Again, please do subscribe to us on our Pats Fans YouTube channel. Like, share, leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It would really do us a good service to go ahead and keep us high on those podcast rankings, so other Patriots fans can find us. So as we were talking about off the show, I've been kind of tinkering with a 53-man projection. It's a little early, but in camp we'll decide some things. So how I feel like we'll break this down, gentlemen, is that I will list two positions at a time, and then I'll go to both of you for your reaction, and I'll simply, as I read off the names, I'll give like a 1 or 2 sentence kind of like, example of why I feel like why they made the cut or whatever, and then we can have the discussion at the end, and we'll try to rip through this thing. So, I think the first one is quarterback. It's pretty obvious. I feel like it's Drake May and Joshua Dobbs. I don't see another quarterback on the team. I'm sure there'll be another quarterback on the practice squad, but I think Drake May and Joshua Dobbs makes a lot of sense. Joshua Dobbs has obviously been a little bit of a journeyman. He's played in multiple systems, but also had some familiarity with Mike Vrabel. We know Drake May's not going anywhere, so that's not really a surprise. Running back, I had 4, although one is kind of a hybrid player. I have Ramondre Stevenson, Travion Henderson, Antonio Gibson, and then I was thinking about Terrell Jennings on here, guys. I thought he could be a potential pick. They also picked up the young man from Cincinnati. I'm blanking on his name. But I didn't include him either. I put Brock Lampy on here. Mike, do you know is it Brock Lamp or Lampy? I thought it was Lampy.
Yeah, Lampy. That's
Yeah.
how I've been pronouncing it.
Yeah. So the undrafted free agent Brock Lampy is kind of like a fullback and also kind of hybrid H-back, like maybe backup tight end kind of type, there. So again, for running back, Stevenson, Henderson, Gibson, and then Lampy I included in this group. Steve, your reaction to those first 2 position groups?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the quarterback. I think, they're not going to put a third quarterback on the 53 man, especially initially. They'll put him on the practice squad. I mean, no surprise there. The only question I would have in running back is if Travion Henderson actually supplants Gibson as the number 2.
Which is what I think is going to happen, by the way.
I believe that's a very real possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But would Gibson ask to be traded at that point? Would he accept being the third man on the totem pole, and which, to your point, Terrell Jennings, right? That would be the only question there. Would Gibson accept that, or would he ask to be released or traded?
Well, I think just before I go to Mike for this, I think that I would say that, like Lane Larison, another undrafted free agent who's gotten a lot of, run. I think him and Terrell Jennings are going to end up on the practice squad, of course, if they're not picked up by other teams. So if Gibson does go there, that would, kind of, shift that. Now, I think that traditionally a lot of teams have 3 or 4 running backs. In this case, I only have 3 running backs with a fullback who's like kind of an H-back, really. So it's a little bit different. My thing is assuming Gibson doesn't ask for a trade, to your point, Steve, he's kind of a backup for Henderson, but who's really the traditional backup for Stevenson? So you want to make sure you have at least kind of more of your traditional bell cow running back, at least around. And I think Gibbs to Todd Zazzarati, and Todd, what's up, man? Thank you for commenting and listening. I do think Gibson's underrated, but I also think that Henderson is going to give that explosiveness, and I think Gibson will be used too. I mean, McDaniels loves to use running backs, especially what they call the pony package, where there's 2 running backs in the backfield. I think that McDaniels has shown, throughout the years that he's more than willing to have multiple running backs. So it's like I almost feel like I'm a running back short, but I can't decide where on the roster I would trim down one extra person. And that really is the whole guessing game of it all. So if just kind of, not to go on for too long of a rant, but like I do feel like there's probably some room on the list for an extra running back to be added, because that, to me, Steve, was a question for myself. And as I was going through the process, I was thinking, just given some of the numbers make a lot of sense, but and when I say some of the numbers, I mean the numbers on the actual positional group. But I still wonder if there's an extra running back that should be added. Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the hierarchy of running backs here, because here's where the rub could come in. And again, going back to what you said, Derek, several times about watch what the Patriots do on the field rather than what they
What they
say or
say.
what's being said around them. Steve, same thing. If you read the tea leaves in terms of how the snaps were divvied out yesterday, Antonio Gibson had a tremendous day. He had 4 catches, and that's very good at a time like this. But all 4 of those catches came off the arm of Joshua Dobbs, not from Drake May. Travion Henderson, Ramondre Stevenson are the guys working with May's unit right now. So, to your point, Steve, if there is a situation where he's going to end up being 3rd man on the totem pole, is he going to want to hang around to do that? That's going to be the question. If he does, and he doesn't give you any qualms about being able to do that, without question, you want Antonio Gibson in this room. I do believe he's vastly underrated, and I think he's a very good back and someone that could thrive in a McDaniel system, even in a reduced role. The question is, does he want to accept it? I think that's going to be something very much worth watching heading into training camp and maybe in the first couple of practices.
Yeah, and I thought he was underutilized last year. I mean,
very much so.
To Todd's point about him being underrated, I think that's a good point, and I thought he was underutilized last year.
Down the stretch, Steve, he had some explosive plays.
Yes, and with Josh McDaniels, again, he loves throwing to the running backs, and I think that's where Gibson is at his best. But with Travion Henderson and Ramondre isn't a slouch catching the ball either. We've seen that. So will there be enough to go around for everybody? That's and especially with Gibson being a veteran, he may be looking to play more. That would be my only question there, Derek. But I like the idea. I mean, I think that's a pretty good selection right there.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, Terrell Jennings was a tough one for me to cut, and I'm not 100% sure. And honestly, I think I might have added one too many defensive backs, and we'll circle back to that at the end of the discussion because I think I might actually take one defensive back out and add maybe like a Terrell Jennings in there because as we're about to see, I'm only having 2 tight ends on the roster. Brock Lampy is the fullback tight end, so he kind of works as both ways, but as we've talked about, McDaniels loves throwing to running backs, usually has a fullback, and there's usually at least 3 tight ends on the roster. Now, as we go through here, I'll give you my, kind of my thought process of where I got that from. So we'll go from here. Tight end, I have Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper. I don't think that's made much of a discussion. I think we're expecting that. Both two great veteran players and very solid at the position. The receiver position, this is going to be the conversation. I mean, it's hard. I can't get away from the more I look at this list, the more I kind of talk myself in or out of it. But I can't get around them leaving roster cuts away with less than 6 players. So I have Stephon Diggs. I think he looks healthy enough to not be on PUP. I'm assuming in this scenario he is not going to be on PUP. Demario Douglas, I think, is still going to make the team. Mac Hollins, I've heard a couple of things. I heard Paul Perillo from Patriots Unfiltered talk about how he's heard from a couple of people that he might be dealing with something. That could open up a spot for somebody else. Although I still think there's going to be 6 receivers in the room. But Hollins is a guy that they like. He's been productive when he's been healthy, and I think he's a good veteran to have around the building. I think that's why Vrabel and Elliott Wolf brought him in. Kyle Williams is definitely not going anywhere. Efton Chisholm, the hype train is going. It is full steam ahead, and everyone's talking about him. I've heard from Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Karen Garigian, guys from Patriots.com. Mike Reese, everyone's talked about him. There was a video I put on my Twitter account the other day that you saw Chisholm kind of run what they call like a whip route and the cut was impressive. The stop on the dime ability is the reason he was drafted or not drafted rather is a lot of people said that he ran too slow. But at the same time, you could say that about a lot of guys. But for a player at his position, you want that phone booth quickness. You don't need that long speed ability, and you saw that there. And again, it's on my Twitter account, and if people want to check it out, if you haven't seen it, it was impressive. I mean, it's hard for somebody to move that quickly from going in one direction to the other. And then Keishon Boutte.
That was on full display these past couple of days. And I'm sorry to interject, Eric, but
no.
The ability to make defenders miss, even when you don't have that breakaway speed, that straight line speed, is tremendously impressive. Yeah, everyone that's getting excited about Efton Chisholm III, get excited. I can tell you right now, this kid is the real deal.
Yeah, no, he's definitely. I think he's definitely in the running to make the team. And then the last guy is Keishon Boutte. So I put him on. It was a battle in my mind, and Steve and I talked about this ad nauseum on the phone the other day offline. It was, as we always do, ask our wives. I would say Boutte and Jalen Polk were the two guys that I was kind of going through. And the reason I went with Boutte is I know it's going to be a tough pill to swallow if a second-round pick from a year ago gets cut. That would really stink. And I like Jalen Polk. And I think that he will have a better second year if he's given the chance. But I also know how many comments he's made off the field to reporters and kind of had not the best energy that I think maybe Mike Vrabel went for. So I kind of was thinking that maybe Boutte might be the play. To me, it's Keishon Boutte or Jalen Polk. I'd be shocked if they both made the roster. Mike, what are your thoughts on all those things?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm in agreement with you on the receivers. As very difficult as I think it will be for the Patriots to part with a second rounder in Polk, and especially someone who has garnered some respect, some begrudging respect from Mike Vrabel in Javon Baker. I think the Patriots right now are looking for as much of a fit within a McDaniels type offense as anything else. And the type of players that they're going to put around Drake May, especially his receiving core, are going to have to be very amenable to that type of style. I just think that the six that you've got here when it comes to Diggs and Pop and Matt Collins, obviously. Now, Matt Collins is interesting because I am hearing some similar things surrounding him that he may be dealing with something. He wasn't on the field for Monday or Tuesday's practice. So that's something to keep under your hat. There's a lot of time between now and the start of training camp, but if you start to hear things squeak out, that could be something to watch.
And just to interject on that point, though, real quick, Mike, is that assuming I'm assuming that Stephon Diggs is going to start on the roster and he's not going to PUP.
Yeah.
If Mac Collins is dealing with something and it takes a couple weeks, maybe they keep a Jalen Polk or they have a Javon Baker,
Absolutely.
And I think they're going to try to put Javon Baker on the practice squad. I have a feeling he'd go somewhere else just because he's a fourth-round pick from a year previous. So I'm sure there's going to be another team that would claim him. But maybe you can put Polk on the roster, put Matt Collins on PUP if he's dealing with something, and then go ahead and sneak Polk off to IR or whatever, and bring Hollins back. And usually at that time, because he won't have obviously the accredited seasons. Usually at that time, mid-season, 6 weeks in, a lot of teams don't have room and they don't poach off other people's rosters as much mid-season. So maybe then you can squeeze them all in if it works out like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It could definitely happen that way. And again, I think that's one of the big reasons why I think you're correct in putting Boutte on this roster. I don't think that's someone that the Patriots want to take the risk of losing. You've seen progression each and every season. Almost each and every time he takes the field, you're seeing a renewed vigor in Keishon Boutte. So a lot of tough decisions to be made for the Pats over the course of the next few weeks.
Yeah, Steve, do you have anything else to add, or do you want me to move on to the offensive line?
No, I think that was some good stuff there. And, I'll just comment on Joel's post on there that Claire Cooper isn't going to like only having two tight ends. So,
but you also have Brock Lampy, which is like a half a tight end. So it's like 2.5. Okay.
And it's good to see Chris Godwin back on with us. So thank you, Chris, for your comments. And I agree. I mean, those last two positions that Derek talked about, there's going to be a ton of competition, at those last two slots on the roster for wide receivers.
I think defensive back will be interesting because there's a lot of names, but I think it's a little bit more clear there. I think receiver and left guard are far and away like the leaders in the clubhouse for the most interesting conversation of the depth chart. Let's dive into the offensive line, and so I'll do center, guard, and tackle here. I have Garrett Bradbury, who they just signed from Minnesota. Jared Wilson from Florida State, who they drafted. At guard, I have Mike Onwenu, Cole Strange, Sidiso, Layden Robinson. Onwenu's going to be the right guard. Cole Strange, Sidiso, Layden Robinson, all could be left guard potential. Layden Robinson and Sidiso, I think, will be right there. And then Cole Strange, whether he's a starter or not, has center and guard flexibility. So that's why I thought he made the cut in this instance. And then at tackle, I had Will Campbell, obviously, Morgan Moses, obviously, and then I had Caden Wallace, the other tackle from Penn State the previous year, and Marcus Bryant from Missouri, who they drafted this year, who's an absolute house. And by the way, just a couple of things on this. Not that it really matters for this exercise. I think Garrett Bradbury is going to be the starting center for at least this year. I would bet, if I could bet house money right now, I would bet that Jared Wilson's the starting center by next year. That would be my prediction. I go back on Sidiso and Layden Robinson and Cole Strange for left guard, and I'll get your guys' take on that. Marcus Bryant, by the way, even though he's a backup tackle, he also has the ability and the athleticism to play if they wanted to use Brock Lampy as more of a hybrid, going back to the H-back discussion. If they wanted to use him as a fullback and maybe a little bit as an extra tight end, they could also use Marcus Bryant when they used to use the extra tackle to go ahead and pound the rock in if they're close to the goal line. I can see them using it with Bryant because he's a big boy. So you could kind of go ahead and make that multifaceted. I guess, Mike, I'll go to you. What are your thoughts on the offensive line and how it's laid out?
Yeah, I mean, this is Moneyball right here. When you take a look at the offensive line, the New England Patriots have a lot of bodies to plug in. They've got a lot of holes to fill, and they need, I think, arguably the most contributions or the most improvement out of any unit that's on this roster. I agree with you on Wilson. I do believe that he will be the starter in due time, but I think Bradbury is going to get the nod this year. I've received some feedback about people being worried about Caden Wallace getting some reps at the guard position. I think that's more of versatility purposes. I think that's more kind of just to see where these guys are. I wouldn't look for Caden to be playing on the inside. He's an outside. He's a tackle. That's where he's going to be. Jack Conkley is a name that I would keep on the radar as a potential dark horse at the guard position. We've seen him align throughout the last couple of days and even through OTAs at that position. I know Jack's got some support in this room, so keep an eye on him. That's someone to watch. And again, Cole Strange being your starting left guard is looking like a foregone conclusion now with Wes Schweitzer's retirement. That's not a bad thing, folks. This is a competent professional football player. He knows what he's doing with the right coaching and consistent coaching. I do believe you're going to see what the previous regime, that drafted him, saw in him. Maybe not in first round necessary, but I do believe that you'll see what they saw in him, and I think he can be a solid complement to whoever's taking snaps in the middle this year.
Yeah, I thought Wes Schweitzer was a guy that I had on there, and honestly, I was debating having him on there, and then he retired, so it made it easy to go ahead and knock him off the list. Jack Connolly, obvious BC connection, and I think I don't even know if I'd call him a dark horse. I would call him he'd be one of those players that if we're looking at this 53-man roster, Mike, I would say would be one of the last, how in March Madness you have last four in, last four out.
Mm-hmm.
To me, Jack Connolly would have been one of the last four out, if that makes sense. I look at it and I say, and when he's not going anywhere, Cole Strange, I would put right on that bubble. But because he has center and guard ability. I thought the versatility could go ahead and wiggle him in there, kind of shoehorn him in there. City So and Layden Robinson, I think, are right there. So if Jack Connolly makes it, I think it will be replacing either Strange, So, or Robinson. Like that to me is where I see that. Steve, what are your thoughts on this whole conversation?
Well, I agree with all of your picks for the offensive line, and I don't see any changes coming there. Again, the retirement of Wes Fleischer. I mean, I thought that was a little bit of a surprise because he was getting a lot of play early in OTAs, and I assumed he was all in, but maybe his body was telling him something different. So,
right.
We haven't heard anything yet, but that's what I would assume, happened there.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, I do, again, I do think that if you go back to the running back position, the offensive line, I can't see going back to the running back and adding another one. I can't see removing, in terms of like a player number for each position at the depth chart. I can't see doing it from offense. So if they add another running back, I think it's going to come from the defense. I think it has to, because if I look at it, I'm like, this has to be the number, in terms of positional. And I like the names, but I do think, Mike, to your point again, Jack Connolly, I think, is a name to keep in mind. Antonio Mafi and a couple other guys like you could put in that conversation, but I just think that other guys have performed better and have more versatility than some of the other ones. And Connolly's a guy that I think, if he doesn't make the team, I think they're going to try to put him on the practice squad, which would make a lot of sense. Let's dive into the defense. So we'll go front seven here, boys. We got Keon White and Milton Williams. I put them at defensive end. That was how it was classified when I did this. And by the way, anyone who's listening, if you want to go to PatsFans.com, you scroll to the footer at the bottom. There's called Pat's Picker. You can go ahead and create your own 53. If you want to share it, we can talk about it on the show moving forward. But defensive end, I have Keon White, Milton Williams. I got Tonga Barmore, Farms Jr., and Joshua Farmer. On the defensive line, I got Jack Gibbons, Christian Ellis, and Robert Spillane. So a lot to unpack there. We also have Harold Landry, Kavion Chason, Anthony Jennings, and Braden Swinson. So a lot to unpack. So Keon White and Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, I don't think are going anywhere. Tonga is going to be that run stuffer. They're going to go ahead and move in situationally. Joshua Farmer, they just drafted this year, relatively high mid-round pick. Like, I don't think he's going anywhere. Plus, I think he offers a kind of an interesting skill set. Jeremiah Farms was one that I really think if I was looking at the entire roster, I would look at Farms as like someone who I could see a role for, especially in more of a penetrating style defense. But at the same time, I didn't know if I had too many bodies to the position. So he's someone who I think is kind of one of the last ones in, I would say. Jack Gibbons, Robert Spillane, tackling machine, history with other coaches on the roster. Gibbons worked with Vrabel in Tennessee, coming off injury, but still good side-to-side quickness. Christian Ellis also has that good lateral ability. Plus, he has a special teams, stuff. Harold Landry, Kavion Chason, and Braden Swinson all offer some interesting off the edge. Anthony Jennings, to me, is, I think, fascinating for this discussion because he makes a lot of sense for setting the edge. I think he's a good player. Does he make sense in this scheme with Mike Vrabel? That is, to me, the biggest question. Steve, what are your thoughts on the guys I listed off in the front seven?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. So I don't have any issue with that part of your front seven whatsoever, because I think they're going to be able to, get after the quarterback. They're going to create pressure. They're going to disrupt things. I think Spillane is probably the guy that, is going to be that quintessential guy that the Patriots add early in the process, right? We saw this so many times where people say, well, he's not great, but he's okay. And then, every week starting in like October, you're going to be like, wow, what a great play by Spillane. Oh, man. Did you see the way he flew in there and made that play? I think he's going to be a really key addition to this defense. I like the other guys as well. I think Christian Ellis and Gibbons both bring that special teams ability. So, they're going to be valuable in this. And, we'll have to see how it all plays out. But I like all of these, these front seven guys that you listed. And I don't think I would change any of that.
Yeah, I just go back to, Farms, I guess Ellis, and then Jennings, all for different reasons. Those would be the only three that I kind of question if they swap those out. But I think everybody else is pretty much a lock for that whole thing. Mike, what's your take on those names and the whole positional group of the front seven?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the both of you guys, especially when it comes to Steve, your thoughts on Ellis and Gibbons and their field awareness. And I think that's something that's extremely important in this type of defense that Mike Vrabel and Terrell Williams are trying to institute. Yeah, you want to be aggressive. You want to get after the quarterback, but it can't be haphazard. There's got to be an agreement. There's got to be essentially a direction that everyone is following. And these guys are so aware of everything that's going on the field. I like to call it wisdom beyond their years on the gridiron, and I think that's exactly what you're going to see from some of these players. So Jennings is someone who also fits that mold, so maybe that's where he finds his niche in a Mike Vrabel defense. But yeah, it really is something. Yeah, I'm seeing Chris pop up. We're going to need a 60-man roster. Yeah, Chris, we're going to need a bigger boat. There's no question about it.
We're going to need a bigger
Patriots
boat.
have a good amount of players on this team that deserve roster spots, but no, I think you've done a great job here, Derek, with filling out the front seven.
Yeah, I am wondering, honestly, I just to kind of put a bow on this on the outside linebackers, I really feel pretty strong about. So here's the thing. I'll say two things. I feel good about the defensive line. Farms is kind of an interesting guy. I was kind of wondering if they were going to add another Tonga type player, another defensive tackle. So I wonder if they would add. I would add another like a kind of a bigger nose tackle in there. Potentially. Ellis, I just don't know if that fits. Just Joel's comments made me laugh and lost my train of thought. Damn it, Joel. But Christian Ellis, I think because of his special teams ability and his speed laterally, I think makes him kind of a fit. The other thing too is Jennings again. With they add another pass rusher, because if Harold Landry or Chason goes down, is Swinson ready to step up? Jennings is a good, solid player, but he's not really the pass rush, type per se. So, do they add somebody else there? So that would be a question I would have for my own self in that positional group. Let's go to defensive backs, and then we'll go special teams, and then we'll wrap up and get the heck out of here. So cornerbacks, guys, I have 6. I have Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis, Marcus Jones. I went with Kobe Minor, Marcelius Dallas, and Alex Austin. I also have Kyle Duggar and Marte Mapu. And then I have Jabril Peppers, Jalen Hawkins, Marcus Epps, and Craig Woodson. So I have a ton of defensive backs. I honestly thought it was probably too much. Honestly, hindsight 2020, boys, I'm not going to lie to you. I feel like Kobe Minor and Marcelius Dial might be battling for one spot, and maybe that's where we add a different one in the front seven, or maybe add an extra running back, on the flip side, because I feel like that might be a little long. My thought process is Gonzalez and Davis aren't going anywhere. I think Marcus Jones adds too much value on special teams and in the slot. Even if it's not the primary slot, it's going to be right there. Kobe Minor, Marcelius Dial, I think they both add some special teams ability. So again, I kind of look at it like that. And Alex Austin, I think really came on strong. Marte Mapu, I had in the strong safety section. I think he could be potentially classified as a linebacker, which we could also get into that conversation too from the previous segment. And then, Hawkins, Epps, Woodson, Peppers, I feel like they all bring value, and Duggar bring value add to that safety position, so they can play multiple guys, pull guys down in the box, go with one high, one strong, whatever, however you want to play it. Mike, we'll go to you next. What are your thoughts on this? Because this is another really, there's a lot of names. It's a cluster. There's a lot of cluster. So it's like, what do you agree or disagree with this position?
I'm not going to necessarily say I disagree with anything of what you did. I think you hit the nail right on the head, though. I think when you look at Kobe Minor and Marcellus Dial, I think they're probably competing for a single spot along this defense, simply because there's so many positional groups that need bodies that they may have to cheat a little bit from a position of strength. And let's face it, they do have a position of strength right now with the cornerbacks. I'll throw Isaiah Bolden into the mix as well. Do not necessarily sleep on him. I believe he could be right in the mix with Dial.
He was right
And,
there. He
with,
was right there as I was doing it, man.
Yeah,
He was.
absolutely. This is a guy 2 years ago who Bill Belichick called one of the fastest players. He had the opportunity to scout last year. Gerard Mayo called him a demon on special teams. He's shown an ability to get after the pass and really keep the play in front of him, and he can mix it up with his fellow receivers. So he's a guy that I think will be right in the mix of trying to earn a roster spot. But you're probably looking at all three of these guys maybe competing for one. I'd say right now a leader in the clubhouse might be Dial because of the versatility that he has. But I'm very high on Bolden, have been since the day they drafted him. So I'd love to see him get a shot in the secondary. When it comes to the safeties, I think you've hit the nail on the head once again. I love Mapu being that type that could play the hybrid linebacker, that could drop back, play the safety position. It's something that he did for a number of years in college. Was very effective in doing so. He's a hard hitter. He plays with a lot of grit, a lot of aggression. So I think this regime is going to like what they see from him. But again, there's only so many positions out there and only so many spots for a lot of bodies and a lot of deserving players that really deserve to get their shot. Tough decision. The secondary is not going to be easy to round out. That's not a positional battle I'm looking forward to grading if I'm Mike Vrabel and this defensive coaching staff.
Yeah, I think honestly, in hindsight, I probably would have put Isaiah Bolden in place of one of those guys. And I'm sure I'll do one more of these, before they make official cuts, and that's probably what's going to happen. But I'm kind of curious to see. I want to see what it looks like, from there. And Mapu is very much like Brock Lampy on the offensive side, right? Where he's a fullback, but he's also kind of like, he also can kind of play the tight end. Mapu can play safety, but also can be moved in the box. And I really think he should be utilized most as a linebacker. Steve, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, Mike took the words right out of my mouth. Where, I was thinking the only guy that I would probably plug in there would be Isaiah Bolden.
But, I know, yeah.
But again, the back end of the secondary, well, the entire secondary is in much, much better shape this year, entering training camp and preseason, because they have tough decisions to make, because I think they have a lot of talent back there. I like the fact that, again, Mapu, like Mike said, he can play that hybrid linebacker role. There's something to be said for that, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I like all these picks too.
And a lot of people, I mean, look, the draft class, we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding on this year's draft class. But if you talk to a lot of people, they'll say Henderson and Williams look explosive on offense. And a lot of people have been talking about Craig Woodson, and I'm kind of curious about his role. How do they use Peppers? Like, to me, I think it's fast. Like I would be curious to see what the formation is going to be week one. Like, is it going to be Craig Woodson at free safety and Jabril Peppers, or is it going to be Kyle Duggar on the back end? Like, will it be Duggar and Woodson on the back end, and maybe they use Woodson or Mapu at linebacker? Like, I wouldn't rule that out. Like, I certainly wouldn't rule that out for what the kind of style they're looking at. So I'm kind of fascinated by that whole thing, 100%. But yeah, the cornerback one is the one with Isaiah Bolden was I would say I'd say Kendrick Bourne and Isaiah Bolden were probably my last two on the outside of this 53. Like, it was tough, as we're going through it. But finishing off with special teams, guys, Behringer, I think, is going to be the starting punter. Julian Ashby is going to be the long snapper. Brendan Schooler, I know he's technically a free safety and got some, safety and got some run on the defense last year, but I put him as a special teamer because I think he's, essentially the lead special teamer, quote unquote. And then Andres Borgalis, the kicker. So those are my four. I don't know if there's any discussion really to be had. I feel like you guys will probably both agree those four are pretty much locks.
Yeah, I mean, actually, other than the kicker, the other guys don't even have competition, right? I mean,
right.
So
they're
they're pretty much locked in. Yeah, and I agree with you. We used to do the same thing with Matthew Slater, right? He was listed as a wide receiver, but we always put him on the special team.
All right, Mike, what are your thoughts? Anything on the special teams?
Yeah, I think the special teams right now are fairly easy to decipher. I know a lot of people were talking about a kicker competition in training camp between Borgalis and between John Parker Romo. And look, John Parker Romo has actually looked very good. He's actually been hitting his kicks, doing a good job. But as long as that race is close, it's always going to favor the guy that came in with draft capital. And Borgalis is someone that the Patriots have obviously invested in. They're very high on him. He's looked good so far, so he's going to get that nod no matter what, unless he for some reason doesn't continue on the trajectory that he's at, and Parker outplays him in training camp. So I think that's a foregone conclusion. But other than that, I think those spots are pretty well taken and pretty well set.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, it's a rough draft. I feel good. I would say, as far as 53 guys, I would say I feel good about at least 45 of them. I think that they're definitely probably somewhere between, 7 or 8 guys where I really am, I don't know the direction they're going to go. We also don't know, to be fair, what's going to happen between now and training camp, injuries, free agent signings, like those are all variables that you can't really predict, but just going off of what we have now, and that's what they were. Gentlemen, final thoughts. Steve, I'll go to you. Final thoughts for the show today.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting training camp, and in regards to Derek's 53-man roster, Mike will be doing a write-up for SI tomorrow, and he'll compare Derek's to what he did, and I'll compare both of those to mine on Sunday and my Sunday column. So feel free to drop us a line and send in yours. And again, on PatsFans.com, Pat's Picker, it shows the entire roster, and you can make your own and let us know what you guys are thinking. We would love to compare notes.
Yeah, I would love to get any feedback over Twitter or whatever. If you guys send in your comments or anything, I'd love to go ahead and kind of try to pick each other's brains. And it's a great tool by Ian Logue on PatsFans.com at the bottom again on the footer. Like Steve said, Pat's Picker. It's a great tool to go ahead and utilize, and you can do it in a matter of minutes. He made it really simple to go ahead and build it. I would just say quickly that I'm excited to see your guys' 53s. I'm curious how many guys we have differently, so that will be a fun discussion in the next couple of weeks. Mike, why don't you give us your final thoughts, and then why don't you take us out?
Absolutely. No, I think these times of the season right now are always interesting. I know we're going to hit what's called the midsummer lull or the early summer lull before midsummer leads to training camp. But definitely, folks, continue to keep your eye on this team. There's no shortage of storylines. We'll continue to bring them here on Patriots No Huddle. It's always my honor to share the microphone with these two fine gentlemen, two of the greatest guys in the world, but not only that, but great analysis that you can find only here on Patriots No Huddle. So once again, gentlemen, thank you very much for all of your insight today and for your time. Folks, thank you for taking time out of your day to spend with us here on Patriots No Huddle and listen to our Pat's takes as we take you into 2025 training camp, which will begin on Wednesday, July 23rd. Patriots making that official on Tuesday. Training camp will open on the 23rd of July, and we are all looking forward to seeing you all there. In the meantime, on behalf of Steve Balistreri and Derek Havens, I'm Mike Debate, reminding all of you to stay safe, to stay well, to be the change that you wish to see in the world. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you back here again next time on Patriots No Huddle.